got on. How'd you get on, wife?
I didn't do anything.
Well, you're the only person that's in, so
In where?
in our Zoom. I haven't
No,
let
you
anybody
put
else
lots
in.
of people in. I've been admitting them. There's 9 people.
Well, you've been admitting them. Okay, well, we're about to go live. We're making sure we're on Facebook, which we are.
You're on Facebook.
And now you've been letting people in live. It's been you.
Well,
that's
they
been
were
doing
waiting. I wanted
Right. That doesn't mean they're allowed to come in.
longer.
No, we have a lot of people on that are going to be joining us on Facebook. I want to give a very special warm welcome to our candidate, our first candidate in a week of candidates from Assembly and Senate. We're beginning tonight with our Senate candidate, Kip Mueller, who's going to be here. You don't really pronounce it Mueller, do you?
Tend to say Mueller, but I get Mueller so often that doesn't faze me.
The amazing thing about Kip and his name and his background, and I think the most amazing thing is not how you pronounce the name, but the fact that somebody named Kip Mueller or Mueller is actually a Jewish guy from Sacramento. I think that's one of the coolest things that a lot of people don't know. A lot of people are not aware of this fact, and they're getting to know you. They're getting to know who you are here in our area in Santa Clarita. And I think there's going to be a lot of people are going to say, wait a second, there's a Jewish Kip. And not only is he a Jewish Kip, but he's running for the Senate in a position that a lot of people kind of think of as a very, very red district. But in reality also, it's changing. And a lot of people aren't aware. And some people are, I know. Some of us are very politically educated. But a lot of people don't know that the district has been shifting over these last years, and that it is becoming bluer, and in some cases very blue, I guess we could say.
Yeah. So sorry, can you hear me right now? My
can.
Wi-Fi cut out. Okay, great.
Yeah. So
yes.
First of all, tell me about a little bit about what motivated you and kind of brought you into this race. I mean, you're obviously a young guy. People know that. You can see that you're a young guy. What motivated you to get into this race in particular, to jump into the Senate race?
So first off, thank you, Rabbi, for having me and for welcoming me in your Sukkot. I'll just start real quick by giving a little bit of background about me, and I suppose that'll help me answer that question as well. Did grow up in Sacramento, as you said. I went to B'nai Israel in Sacramento, was bar mitzvahed there. And actually, when I was, I believe in 1998, our temple was the temple that was firebombed in Sacramento. And I helped clean up the ashes that day and sort of rebuild metaphorically and literally our temple and our community stronger than it ever had been before. And Tikkun Olam and that community was an integral part of my upbringing, even before that had happened, of course, but certainly after. And my Jewish identity is important to me, and the Jewish community is very important to me. So this means a lot being here today. I'm a workers' rights attorney. I worked for President Obama's Department of Justice. I look young. I'm 34. I guess, I don't know, whatever you want to call that, young. But I at least have some work under my belt. I was in the Department of Justice in the Consumer Protection Branch, working for President Obama. I worked for a district attorney's office prosecuting consumer fraudsters as well as sexual predators too. And I'm now a workers' rights attorney. I also am a pro bono asylum attorney in Adelanto, which is the east side of this district. And I have been, first off, from a young age, very politically engaged and interested in bettering our community and our world. And also intimately involved and engaged with state law all the time. It's where my practice is. It's my bread and butter. It's my everyday. I'm in the business profession and professions code, the wealth and institutions code, the civil code, the code of civil procedure. I've worked in the penal codes. I've prosecuted criminal cases, both federally and statewide. So although I look young. This is my work. This is what I do for a living. And there's some real changes that I think need to be made that can help better our community. And I'll just add that I think that our generation deserves a prominent voice on many of these issues, because as we all know, the trajectories on these issues are being set today. If you're talking about climate change or homelessness, housing prices, what a 21st century working class looks like, what is living a life working in the gig economy look like? Are you able to retire? On all these issues, I think we can all agree that our generation deserves a prominent voice as well on these issues, because what's decided today will affect the rest of our lives. And so all of that pushed me to decide to run.
Now you mentioned the experience of the synagogue B'nai Israel being firebombed in Sacramento, which a lot of people here might have forgotten about. I remember it pretty well. You and I had discussed. I had actually taken a group of confirmation students from the synagogue to Sacramento, and from Sacramento I took them to Israel in '93, and it definitely. I mean, I knew some of the families that were directly affected, but in those years since, we've seen some horrific attacks on the Jewish community that you can say to some extent that experience in Sacramento is kind of like a foreshadowing of more ominous things to come. And for you, when you see what's gone on in the United States and with the Jewish community in particular, what's your take on a call to action, so to speak, now?
Well, it's very troubling to me that I think a lot of people hope that sort of when it comes to discrimination that history is linear and that things just get better over time, when in fact, looking at recent events, it seems more and more like this is a cyclical issue when it comes to anti-Semitism. And anti-Semitism seems to always pop up. It is the most frequently found form of discrimination you can find worldwide. And it's deeply, deeply troubling to me. And I think that it's important that both Jews and non-Jews stand up and vociferously say how against it we are and how we can all unite on that front against it. I'm troubled by the fact that I think there are folks, to be completely frank, on both sides of the aisle who sometimes equivocate on it. And I have no tolerance for that at all. And like you alluded to, Rabbi, I saw the devastation that anti-Semitism wreaks on a community quite firsthand, and look forward to being a very vocal, leader in our state Senate, making sure that we are doing everything we can, both as leaders in the community, but also legislatively, to combat anti-Semitism and to be proactive about it. I think one thing that the Jewish community really looks for is not just being reactive, but being proactive when it comes to fighting anti-Semitism, and I intend to do just that. And I've already spoken with Assemblymember Jesse Gabriel and Senator Ben Allen and other leaders in the Jewish community about joining the Jewish caucus and about being a leader for our community in fighting that battle.
And I think it's interesting too. So I'm a lot older than you, but when I was a kid growing up, the Jewish caucus in the Assembly and in the Senate was usually pretty large. I mean, today, thankfully, we have Gentile members of that caucus who show their support and who show solidarity with the Jewish community by affiliating with the caucus. But the caucus is, I don't know what the numbers are today as what they would have been in maybe 20, 25, 30 years ago. But it's much smaller. The Jewish representation in our statewide offices is much smaller than it was probably around the time, again, you were really young, born, but a lot of us who are on the line right now who are 50 plus, there used to be a good, 10, 15% of the Senate and the Assembly that were represented by Jews. It's not the case anymore.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that it's important, especially again, with the issues that are going on today, with the ethnic studies curriculum as well, and issues that we're seeing recently around the world and in the United States when it comes to anti-Semitism. It's important we have our representation. I'm looking forward to being a part of it. Yeah.
Well, since you brought that up, and this is a big issue for the Jewish community, then obviously there's people who don't know about it, but a lot of people have been hearing about it. Hopefully, you've been hearing about it, and that is Assembly Bill 331, 331,
Right. 331.
Yes, 331. Yes, that is the ethnic studies curriculum issue, which is for the K-12, the high school curriculum, but has drawn a lot of controversy, especially within the Jewish community, for its treatment of Israel, for its almost, again, a complete reinterpretation of events in the Middle East over the last 70 years or so, but also, again, within the context of communities that have been subject to prejudice and anti-Semitic, as an anti-Semitism was almost gone from some of this curriculum. So it's a big issue, and I know that the governor stepped in and vetoed it. But how do we not get into that situation so that we have to have a last-minute stay of execution, so to speak, on education, on cultural education that should be at least sensitive to the Jewish community? This is an issue that has gotten the Jewish community riled up, not just, by the way, in California. This made national news, folks.
Yeah, and rightly so. I think that that's sort of what I was speaking to earlier about equivocation, or for some reason, when it comes to anti-Semitism, it's just, and this is the history of anti-Semitism too. It's not just today. For some reason, it's not given the same standard when it comes to unacceptable forms of discrimination that we have to unequivocally say are absolutely wrong, that we need to step up to and stop. And so I actually have been in touch with the Jewish caucus and with folks who work for the Jewish caucus about that bill. I was at the Democratic convention helping out when it came to the Democratic bylaws and making sure that the Jewish community is represented fairly in those as well. So even though I'm not elected yet, I've already done some of that work, and I think it's really important, and I want to be fighting for the Jewish community on that front too. So
yeah, it's going to be a big issue. It's not one it's not one that goes away. It's going to keep popping up as long as there is opportunities for people. And again, we don't want to assign blame to the right and left right now, but this is an issue which frankly is an issue that when it pops up now, it's primarily from people on the left. I mean, and that's an unfortunate situation again for Democrats at a statewide level. But again, we don't want to see this become a partisan issue. We don't want to see, the Republicans fighting against it and Democrats abdicating their responsibility on protecting Israel and protecting the Jewish community. So no, I appreciate that. Since we've kind of veered into education a little bit, I want to talk about that because. Oh, sorry, somebody's typing in. Yeah, does someone want us to add something? All right. No, I promise we'll have time for questions if you have anything you want to jump in with. But I do want to tell you, talking about education right now for a second, I don't think people realize how much of our educational issues are a statewide issue. A lot of people think it's the local school district. A lot of people think it's handled here, in our community. But a lot of the educational policies and funding and all of those kinds of macro issues really are on a state level, and quite a lot of it. And obviously, as someone who'd be coming in to the legislature, you'd have a lot of educational issues. There's always assembly bills, Senate bills that are floating around that impact education. Look, we're coming out of, and I will get to this, but since we're in education now, we're going to be coming out of a huge hole that we have to figure out how to get out of once we're even out of the pandemic. Yeah. Once there's a vaccine and once we're going back to business, it's going to take years. We know that.
Yeah.
But we also have an educational crisis in the state. We're severely underfunded, as you know. Everybody knows. I mean, it's not a secret. We have lots of things that we have to balance here. The rights of of underpaid teachers, but pension plans, but also obviously the needs of students. What can you bring to the state government when it comes to education and trying to figure out how do we fix a problem when we have so many other problems? We have to address this problem.
We do, absolutely, and it's definitely one of the key issues that I want to focus on, especially as you mentioned, Rabbi, in light of COVID and the budget deficit that we're going to be facing. How are we going to keep our schools funded? And the schools actually need even more funding than usual because they're going to need to be able to deal with COVID, which, I'm hopeful for a vaccine, but we can't assume there's going to be a vaccine anytime soon. And so it's an issue that I'm quite concerned about. And I think that we're going to have to be, exploring ways to find that funding. I will just say that even with the funding that we have too many disparities when it comes to our education system. And those disparities widen at times like this when resources are less available. And so there's accountability gaps that we need to deal with the state's local control funding formula to narrow those achievement gaps. And then also the digital divide has really come to light recently. I know the LA Times has written quite a bit about it. So that all students, regardless of zip code, have the technology and training the technology and availability of that, and they can use that technology to stay in school for the time being. And addressing that is also going to be something we're going to have to do next year. So on all those fronts, whether it's a bond or something to get the requisite funding we need, we're going to have to explore ways to do it. And I'm as concerned about it as anybody else. I can't, with this budget shortfall, we're going to have to get creative and find the funding.
Is there anything growing up in Sacramento or your own personal background when it comes to this that you bring to education, to why this, again,
yeah.
We have to remember that so much of the policy, educational policy and funding in our local community is directed by Sacramento.
Yeah.
In your own backyard as a kid.
Yeah. So my mom was a community college counselor for students with disabilities for 38 years. She just retired this year. And so I grew up seeing the stories, and I went to all public schools, kindergarten through college at UC Berkeley. And so I saw how important our public schools are, how much they need the funding, what kind of change they can make for people's lives. And my mom would bring home the most incredible stories you could ever hear of people who rebuilt their lives from, I could go on and on with those stories, but I was hearing those from a really young age, and it was really impressed upon me how important our public schools are, how incredible they can be to change lives. And I'm proud to have gone to public schools throughout my life. I really appreciated that learning, and I appreciated being in a diverse schools that had folks from all socioeconomic backgrounds, and learned a lot. And it's near and dear to me for sure. And I want to make sure we're protecting and I will just mention, we have the support of teachers across the board, school employees across the board. Our campaign is supported by all those folks because we're going to fight for them.
And let's kind of then step back to the macro picture. Let's look at it this way. So you're elected, you come into the Senate, you're coming in at a time when who knows where we're going to be with the fight against COVID. But stepping back for a second, when you first, were thinking about this, when you first were thinking about getting involved in this race, what would you have said were your priorities? You get elected, you come in. What are going to be the things that new Senator Kip Mueller says is going to happen on his watch when he's now representing this district in Sacramento?
Yeah. So so this is pre-COVID, of course. So when I was deciding to run, it was a few issues. I mean, and it goes back to what I said earlier about how the trajectories are being set on these issues that we care a lot about. First off, this district really needs representation and resources, especially in the Antelope Valley and in the Victor Valley. last in line for resources, and really the basics are what I want to fight for. Cleaning up the air and the water. Some of the dirtiest air you can find in the United States is around here. Getting a public four-year university here. We don't have a single one. Our local economy. Too many people, rely on commuting, and we could build a local economy here around a green energy economy, and that's what I want to do. It's also issues similar to that, like climate change. I just feel that, we need leaders who will say absolutely that they believe in the science when it comes to climate change, that they believe the politics have to be caught up with the science when it comes to climate change. And if they're not willing to say that, then they're not qualified for public office anymore, in my opinion. It's just, that's a threshold. And when I talk to journalists or other people, I say, please ask these candidates, Democrat or Republican, ask them if they're willing to catch the politics up with the science on climate change, because we don't have time. And it's not fair to us to have people in positions of power who won't accept the science. Homelessness is an issue that to me is absolutely unconscionable. And reading articles, I mean, obviously we've all seen a lot of it. It's growing. It's gotten to a point where I talk to some friends who ask, is this just the way it is now? Is it just permanently this way? Or does it ever change? Does it ever go back? And I think we need to be bold and take immediate action. I want to see us on a path to a right to housing in California, just like New York has. It's not impossible. And we can build tiny home communities and start with our veterans and create a right to housing for veterans in California. And that the fundamental principle behind that guides us, not only is it morally the right thing to do, which on its own justifies it, but it's also fiscally the right thing to do. It's cheaper to house people than to have them live on our streets. So on all these issues, I think a lot of folks are just really frustrated, and I am personally, with current representation, and I frankly just think we deserve better. I think we deserve folks who believe what I just said and are going to fight those fights.
Well, there's a whole lot to unpack in that, because
Yes.
there's also a mental health component there too, where we've seen a generation of underfunding when it comes to mental health services and basically just basic human rights when it comes to taking care of people who have again, we don't treat mental health as a health issue. So, but that's right. Again, that's such a difficult thing to deal with. But I do want to tell you. So now we do have this pandemic. We do have this reality. And again, it's something that whether we like it or not, or whether you envisioned this was going to be on your plate, it is. So what do you bring to the table to help our state now recover from a pandemic, which again, we don't know what the final, we're still in the midst of it. So we don't know what the final damage is going to be, what the cost, what the final costs are going to be.
Right.
But where we are now, and we do hope that it's going to be soon, what do you bring to the table to help us get out of this?
Well, yeah, that's a good question. I mean, for one, I will defer to and empower our public health experts who know what's best to rebuild our state and get us out of this mess. That includes providing adequate funding for programs that are going to help us get out, if it's contact tracing and testing, making sure we get enough testing out there. I'm fundamentally a believer that, we need to reopen, of course, our economy as quickly as we can in a reasonable way. I'm very concerned about our small businesses and will fight to make sure that the state is providing loans and resources for small businesses to keep their doors open, for workers to continue to pay their rent. I think it's the state's responsibility. I really think it's the federal government's responsibility, and that they're abdicating that role completely when it comes to that. All that being said, and then it's the informal things, making sure that people have PPE and making sure there's a budget for it. So we're getting PPE into our schools, we're getting it to our hospitals, everyone who needs it. And we're making sure that if we want to reopen the economy, you can't just pretend that COVID's not there. You can't get away with just saying, let's just reopen the economy and see what happens. And look, we kind of did that and it didn't work earlier this year. And so, yes, we want to reopen the economy as quickly as we can. Of course we do. But what we want to do is make sure that we're doing it in a way that doesn't create a new spread of this virus. And so I think that Governor Newsom's plans when it comes to sort of slowly reopening, but then keeping data locally in different areas and seeing how many people per 100,000 have COVID. And if that data is moving quickly, then adjusting accordingly, I think is the right way to go. And then, of course, making sure that from now on we are providing or we're properly funding public health emergency preparedness. We better have learned our lesson too, and we plan ahead for the next time something like this happens. And I don't want to make this too political, but there are folks who voted for that public health emergency preparedness. There are folks who did not. And we had some funding for it. We obviously didn't have enough. And so preparing for the next one and being smart about it is going to be really important in the coming years. This is not an aberration. This could, for all we know, there could be further mutations of this virus. This could be ongoing. We don't know the answer to that, but we better plan accordingly and plan for the worst to protect our communities.
So when we look at how we respond to COVID and what you can bring to the table, again, we don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we assume that you know, the state is going to remain to be pretty solidly blue, but the district itself, regardless of well, I guess unless there's a huge flip, which could happen, you never know, but it's going to probably still be fairly, even if it's not with the elected officials, the makeup is going to be still pretty purple. I mean, it's a pretty purple district that you're going to be representing. How do you see being able to reach across the aisles and try to work with a lot of the local politicians who might very likely continue to be Republican?
Yeah, I'm excited to do that. And the thing is, there's a lot we can agree on, certainly. One of those things is let's build up this district. Let's get resources back here. Let's get a four-year university here. Let's get funding for local governments, or local governments around here. Let's clean up our water and our air. There's just the basics when it comes to providing for our community specifically. I think we can all agree that would be a good thing. Beyond that, it's just having those conversations, always having the door open, always listening. And I talk to folks all across the aisle, beyond across the aisle. I've talked to people of all political persuasions, no matter how extreme. And what I say is just bring me your concerns, but bring me the data, the studies, the science, the metrics, that kind of stuff. And let's set the partisan terminology and the buzzwords completely aside, and let's just talk out what you want, how we can get it done, and let's optimize it so that it meets what we all want out of it. So, for example, a lot of people ask me, so are you for workers or are you for businesses? And I do not buy that dichotomy at all. I don't think that you're either with one or the other. I don't buy that whatsoever. I think that helping our workers helps businesses. Helping our small businesses employs more people, and making businesses more efficient allows them to create more jobs. There are a lot of ways to approach economic issues where everyone stands to gain. And so I'm always looking for those kinds of solutions first. And where we don't agree on things, and it's really impossible to come to complete agreement, I can at least say that I'm going to be completely transparent and open and always have a listening ear. It doesn't mean I'll agree with everyone on everything. Nobody does that. But I always want to hear people out. And sometimes, people just you have this value A and value B, and you just happen to value B more than I value B, but let me hear you out. Let me see where you're coming from and see if we can work it out in a way where everyone stands to gain as much as we can.
Excellent. Well, I want people to start coming up with formulating some questions.
Sure.
And I want people to be able to jump in with some questions in the remaining time we have. And I really appreciate you taking the time to be there. So please people get ready. So I have this one question though that I was thinking about when I first learned about your story. I want to know. So you win the election. You go. You're going to be heading up to Sacramento. Do you move back home? Do you live back home? Become a boomerang kid and live in your childhood home when you first come back?
I haven't, honestly. I've been so heads down and just fighting for this. I haven't even thought that through. But my mom would.
You didn't talk to your mom and say, "Hey, mom, I'm hoping to come back home. Can I do you have a room for me?"
She would like that, I'm sure. Yeah. I haven't figured that one out. I don't know. It's a good question.
But Sacramento has there was a lot of development, a lot of infrastructure that was going on there over the years. Obviously, the last few years, building a new stadium downtown and trying to fix up that area. You see that your hometown sees some changes over the last days, right?
There's a lot more going on than when I was growing up there. That's definitely true. Yeah. No, I think that Mayor Steinberg has done a good job, and I actually.
Well, I want to say he was a member of your shul, wasn't he?
Yeah. And his wife is our cantor at the temple I grew up at in B'nai Israel. And I worked for him for a little bit, and I think he's done a good job representing Sacramento as the mayor. Yeah, the economy's grown there quite a bit. I want to see the same thing here. That's what I feel like we can absolutely do that here, and build our local economy, build up, walkable downtown areas where folks can.
And who knows, the Kings might be available by then too to come to San Francisco. I'm just they're always falling on their face. That's a local Sacramento joke. They're always looking for a new stadium. All right, I wanted to open it up. Does anybody, if you want to jump in, you can raise your hand or unmute yourself. Jump in with any questions if anybody has any questions for Kipp. I know we've got some educators on the line. We've got some musicians on the line. Does anybody want to jump in? If they don't jump in, I see one of the people here that I'm going to jump in and ask the question for them. Anybody? Okay, well then I'm going to ask the next question then.
Oh, Wendy might have a question. Oh,
is Wendy? Are you going to jump in?
You can go ahead.
No, because I was going to ask it for you, but I'd rather you ask it because it affects you a lot more than it affects me. But I am concerned about it. Well, because you're my friend and because I care about you, but also because it doesn't just affect Wendy. But Wendy, go ahead. You're on.
Okay, so I'm a professional musician. That's all I do. And obviously, when the corona hit, there was no gigs. But before that, I kept hearing about AB5, the whole gig worker issue, which, could potentially affect me and my work even at the temple. And I know there's been a lot of people fighting this way and that way. Some people want to make it nationwide. Then I heard maybe it's not going to pass. Then I was just reading about the Proposition 22 that's on the ballot now. So I'm a little confused as to what is going on now.
Yeah,
and
that's a good question.
Where do you stand on it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there was the Dynamex decision of the California Supreme Court that changed the way that we classify employees versus independent contractors, and it was a game changer in California. And AB5 was sort of the legislature's attempt to codify and to make consistent what was decided by the California Supreme Court. Then a lot of folks like yourself, musicians, interpreters, all kinds of different industries came to California leadership and said, hey, this is very disruptive for our business and what we do. Can you fix this for us? And so since then, there's been modifications made. Fundamentally, I'll just tell you where I stand on this issue is, and this goes back to what I was saying earlier, I guess on the bipartisanship question, but on an issue like this, I think first off, you have to be very nuanced. You have to go to a given industry like musicians, gig musicians, for example, and ask, as a gig musician, what do you want? Do you want to be classified as an employee, or do you want to run your business as an independent contractor? And then go to the businesses and ask, what do you want? And you'll find in a lot of industries, there's consistency, such as in yours. Both sides, would say, no, this has been working where we've been doing it on an independent contractor basis. I don't want to be classified as an employee. And my thought about that is, if the worker doesn't want to be an employee and the business doesn't want them to be an employee, then who are we protecting? What are we doing? And I'm a workers' rights attorney. I do believe fundamentally that the labor code is extremely important. I think that for a lot of professions, making sure that things like overtime and minimum wage are enforced are important. But then there's industries where, like what you're talking about, where it doesn't make as much sense. And so I think that this issue has to be handled with a scalpel and not with swinging a hammer and just deciding for all industries the way it should be. Ask the people in that industry, find out what's best for them, and then make sure that there's the appropriate balance. The problem that California had on the other side was there's a lot of what are called perma-lancers, where they really are an employee. They're working for one business all the time, doing work that's fundamental to that business, but they're not getting unemployment insurance. And then if they get sick or something, good luck, too bad. They're not getting the basic protections from the labor code. And that's also deeply concerning. And that hurts all of us if a worker's thrown out without their basic labor rights. We all stand to lose, because that person might foreclose on a home or not be able to pay their rent, that kind of thing. So all that is to say, it's a great question. I think that you ask folks like yourself who are in that industry, find out what's appropriate, and just make sure that the rights of workers are protected, but that's balanced out with what's right for the industry.
Right. So I'm a little confused now as to, is AB5 currently a law, and does that currently affect me and also my son, who's a musician? Or is it still being voted on?
So AB5 did pass. It is now law. Since then, there's been legislation to modify it, so to create exceptions. I don't know all the exceptions offhand, but I believe that musicians are one of the exceptions to AB5 now. I'm not positive on that, but I believe they're one of the exceptions to AB5 now, and can be classified as independent contractors. But we're on Facebook Live. Don't quote me on it. I'm not positive on all the law. But
I thought I had read that on Facebook too.
So those carve-outs, yes, sorry, those carve-outs are taking place right now. AB5 is law, and now on top of that, it's being modified, and carve-outs are being made to make it make sense for different industries. And that's what I would partake in upon being elected, is doing that work of figuring out which industries it's appropriate for, which ones it's not. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Does that answer your question, Wendy?
Yes. Thank you.
Wendy's going to continue to do gigs in her house for now.
Yeah, awesome. What do you play, by the way, Wendy?
Everything. She does everything.
I see a guitar.
Yeah, my guitar's over there. I play bass. I teach piano.
Very cool. Wow.
And you can, and Kip, you can watch Wendy do our tot service, and she's going to do a tot Shabbat. I almost said tot Shabbat. The tot Shabbat, the online tot Shabbat. We got to do that next week. Got to get back on that. But just did a wonderful tot service that thousands of people got to see through our Facebook. That one we made open to everybody, and so we had literally thousands of people that got to see the Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur tot service that she did, which was amazing.
That's
wonderful. And she was playing guitar.
I'd love to attend that.
And talking to puppets. So you can look down the Facebook scroll a little bit, like a week ago, and you'll see her. So awesome. There you go, with a puppet. Cool. But right now she just has her husband behind her.
Okay. No, he's left the building.
The other puppet. I'm just kidding. Anyways, thank you, Wendy. Any other follow-ups on that one? Because that's a real important issue. The AB5 issue also affects writers. It affects lots of independent contractors. Yeah. And obviously a big part of it now is trying to figure out what's going to happen with the Lyft and Uber drivers and those kind of people that are also a huge part of the gig economy, as we call it. Another big part of our economy here, especially in Southern California, and especially, by the way, in Santa Clarita, we have a lot of people involved in the entertainment business. And I wanted to ask you, what do you think now how do we get the entertainment business, which is trying to get back open, right? And they're trying to be very careful with how they open up. But it's kind of a problem because other states are opening up, other countries are opening up for filming. And we're already losing filming outside of the area. How do we safely and effectively get our entertainment business running? Because I got news for you. We don't have many other industries in Southern California. I mean, we've lost aerospace. We've lost so many other, we used to build cars even in Southern California. We don't have much else. We better not lose our entertainment business.
So yeah, it's a really important question. And my sister's actually in the entertainment space. She's a producer and works with Reese Witherspoon. And so I'm very familiar with that world as a result. And no, that's very important to me too. And I think that we have a tax credit in California that's pretty substantial. I think we could grow it even larger for the film industry to make sure that it stays here and doesn't go to places like Georgia, North Carolina, or other states. So I think that that's great that we have that. I would say that it's hard as I would say that the entertainment industry, I'm not as familiar with like what goes on in a studio and kind of the protocol that would have to take place in order to make sure they get to filming again. But I have heard that there's some stuff starting to be created again and that they're figuring out ways to navigate the COVID crisis. On a lot of the questions around restarting and rebuilding businesses, whether it's entertainment or otherwise, in the wake of COVID, the answer is just confronting COVID head on with as much as we can, making sure that PPE is available. It's the same things, and making sure that it's just not spreading around. Because if a lot of people have COVID, then you just can't start going out and filming when it's likely that COVID will end up in that studio. So confronting COVID and really making sure that there's too many people in positions of power who, knowing that they're symbolically very important, won't wear masks and make that a political issue. Somehow wearing a mask has gotten political. I cannot comprehend how we allowed that to happen. And that's when you know that really our democracy is eroding, is when something like wearing a mask is a political issue. But anyways, all of that is going to lead to things like protecting the entertainment industry and other things. You can't answer that question without just saying we have to confront COVID with getting, contact tracing, testing, and PPE out there to folks.
So, so I guess what you're saying too is that this is something you understand as a brother, to have a sibling in the entertainment business. You want to see her, get back to work, and you want to see her stay in California, right?
Yes.
I don't know what Reese Witherspoon's plans are, but definitely we don't want to lose more of the entertainment. And I know we have a few people on the line right now who have family that are involved in entertainment. So,
sorry,
yeah.
just to add one last thing to that is I of course will be in communication with the entertainment industry to make sure that whatever it is that we can be doing at the state level to accommodate that we're able to do, because it's very important. Yeah.
Now, let me ask you something. So as people kind of have gotten to know you a little bit, and I really do appreciate it. We're gonna have to wrap up in a second, but as people have gotten to know you and a little bit tonight, and hopefully again, we'll get to see you regardless of what happens in the election. We obviously wish you the best in this election, and you definitely got your work cut out for you, because you're running against a guy who has been known and has been a fixture in local politics out here for a long time. But as people get to know you a little bit, and hopefully we'll get to know you, because we're hoping that regardless, you stay as part of the community. I mean, who knows? Maybe we'll be able to see you in person in our synagogue. I'm not going to make you feel guilty as the rabbi that you're going to have to start coming to synagogue, that you're going to have to come to synagogue. But the point is that as people get to know you a little bit, what else do you like to? Sounds like you're working really hard, but is there stuff that you like to do that we might see you out once we get out more, kind of things that you'd be doing, kind of ways that people would get to know some of the passions or some of the things that animate you and get you involved besides politics and the law?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I love basketball. I'm a big basketball fan, and I play quite a bit. Got a pretty good jumper. I like to read a lot. I really miss just basic social gatherings, just happy hours and just having conversations with people that aren't about politics, of course. That's one of the things that's hard about this is running for office during COVID. Another thing that makes it difficult is when I'm communicating with people via Zoom, events like this, you know, and I'm really glad you asked that question, Rabbi, because too often I'm answering political questions. But if this were in real life or we were meeting, a lot of the before and after would just be chatting about life, about everything other than the things that bring us together, the common concerns we have, but also passions and things like that. And it's sort of made this more kind of a one-track experience where it's very political in nature, because the only way I'm really interacting on a regular basis is Zoom, where I'm talking about politics. So I do miss that a lot.
Yeah, it is. It's very focused, and you end up not having that social interaction of, you know, just sitting down and talking a little bit and getting to know people, because it is right to business. I mean, I think that's one of the things that we're missing in this Zoom reality, the Zoom business world that we have now, is we're losing that kind of you know, some people will call it the fluff, but reality, that's what makes life special, is those places in between the important moments and the ones that are everybody gets their soundbite and everybody gets their business done, but it's also just relaxing and not being on edge and on point all the time.
Definitely.
So we're condensing everything. We do have a couple questions, and again, we are condensing this. We made it something that people would be able to digest and be a part of. And I really appreciate you kind of leading this off. We had talked about doing this obviously before the holidays, and in previous years, you know, we always have the candidates come to synagogue on a Friday night and just speak a little bit about themselves, and really not very political, but just getting to know the people, and then spending a few minutes afterwards at Oneg, you know, having some cake. And I don't know what kind of punch they have up at B'nai Israel, but, you know, we tend to put out some tea or coffee or water and some schnapps. We tend to go to the schnapps, actually. But I wanted to ask, I know Sandy Keaton, who's got a great background in education. I don't know if your questions regarding that. Actually, I don't want to presume anything. Sandy, what's your question?
Okay, so I'm a retired educational audiologist, still doing consulting, but I became very, very involved and passionate about financial literacy for educators. Because if you're in the K-12 world, a school district cannot choose a 403B plan. It's called Any Willing Provider. It's insurance code 770.3. And we have gone to Sacramento. We've tried to change it. We actually got to a hearing, but you know, insurance companies have a lot of money and they pay a lot to legislators to make sure that we don't change this. And so I'm asking for your help in how we can help educators, because when they get stuck in annuities that are charging 2, 3, 4% on their investments, or they have surrender fees where they can't get their own money out for 10 or 20 years. This is wrong. If you're a community college educator or you're at a state college or university, you can choose one provider. And so I'm throwing that out to you to do more research on what I've thrown to you.
Happy to.
And to help us get that changed.
That sounds wonderful. I'd love to talk to you more about it. And I'll give my contact information. Yeah. Generally speaking, I mean, that makes a lot of sense to me. It sounds wonderful. I have no support from those insurance companies. So I'm not a candidate beholden to those guys. So yeah.
We even tried to speak to the insurance commissioner, but we've had no success. And then of course, COVID hit. So all of our plans to hit Sacramento kind of fell apart.
Sandy, it sounds like you got a potential senator who knows a lot about workers' rights.
Yeah, that's right. That's
right.
Right.
Absolutely. And I'd love to help out how I can.
Just so you know, I used to represent United Teachers Los Angeles at CalSTRS.
Oh,
so I'm familiar with Sacramento and West Sacramento and Raleigh Field and the Embassy Suites and everything around there. So
right. Yeah, let's talk more after. I'd love to get into that with you.
I'd love to. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for coming. Yeah.
We have another educator who has a question. I'm not going to presume it's about education, but Nancy Rapare.
Mine's not about education, but you won't be surprised it's about healthcare.
Okay.
And I will talk to you after you're elected. My big concern is with the insurance companies. we had the situation where insurance company decided not to cover our local hospital. So every time we went in, we had a fight, and just the surprise bills that we get, and we just found out we owe $25,000 to various police.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And just the ability of insurance companies to do that and hospitals to do that. How will you help those of us who are being really financially impacted by this, even though we have insurance? And, you know, it's not, we're not sitting without insurance, but we have insurance, and still, I mean, God bless, we'd be bankrupt if not, but, you know, it's still a heavy, heavy burden.
So, and I grew up, my dad from when I was about 11 had various health ailments that he dealt with. And it was my mom's community college health insurance through her union that was able to allow us to provide the support that he needed throughout his life. He passed away about 7 years ago, but I obviously, it is unconscionable to me. Kamala Harris put it this way. She said that there's people who are suffering from terrible health related situations who sit in parking lots and stare at the emergency room doors knowing, if I walk through those doors, I have no idea what the bill is. I don't know if it's $300 or $30,000. I don't have a clue. And I don't get to decide, and I don't get to see that ahead of time, nor do I have a choice because I'm sick or I'm struggling with whatever is going on. And do I walk through those doors? Do I walk my kid through those doors? Or do I just not do it and just hope for the best? We're the wealthiest country the world has ever known. California is the 5th largest economy in the world. And we have folks who think twice before walking into a hospital. To me, that is absolutely unacceptable. Things like surprise billing, first off, you should know what you're paying for before you walk in those doors. But also, it shouldn't be, if you're suffering from something and there's a nearby hospital, you shouldn't be financially disincentivized from just seeking the help that you need. Like, fundamentally speaking, if there's a hospital nearby and you need to be in that hospital, there should be nothing between you and getting to that hospital for your care. No moment of second guessing or worrying about bills. And anything we can do to get rid of that moment, I want to be a part of. Because to me, everyone should have quality healthcare. And healthcare is a human right. It should never bankrupt people. It should never be something that people second guess whether they want to seek it. Other developed countries don't have that problem. When I studied abroad in Germany, I was, so my dad's side's German, mom's side's Jewish, and I went to study actually sort of my Jewish identity and my German identity actually in Germany. And when I landed on the plane, they handed me a card, and it was just, here you go. And I was like, what's this? They're like, just put that in your wallet, and just anywhere you go, you're fine. Any healthcare you need for any reason, anytime, there's no thoughts about it. And they treat it like a human right. And as a result, there's a better standard of living. It's just, it's unquestionable. And to me, our healthcare system is broken. COVID has really exposed that. It's broken. It has racial disparities that are unacceptable. And I want to be a part of, another one of those issues, I'll wrap it up, but it's another one of those issues that I was talking about. We're setting trajectories now. Are we going to treat healthcare like a human right, or are we going to continue to let it operate this way where it bankrupts people, where they're afraid to seek basic care? And to me, we have to decide that soon. And every day that we don't is another, it's untold stories of tragedies around the country because of it.
Part of the problem is also, like, with my husband had Northrop Grumman, which was Anthem, gigantic group, great coverage. They've pulled out of the individual market. You can't get them.
Yep.
You know, so it's all and the ones who are left aren't paying. So there's got to be some, and I'll talk to you afterwards.
Yeah, we can talk. Yeah. But I definitely want to be a part of fixing this problem for sure. And yeah, we can talk after, definitely.
It's a huge issue of on a local level, on a national level as well. But there is a lot that can be done on this statewide and local level. And I want to finish right now with just a moment for people who, if they want to get involved, if they want to be able to reach out to you and help out with the campaign in these last weeks, and stay engaged. We again, I said from the outset, said it before we even started in our little promotion for those folks. Everybody's going to pay attention to the national elections. We know that. We hope they vote. I mean, hopefully they'll vote in better numbers than they have in the past. 60%, not a good number. But for those who are frustrated, who don't like their national choices, folks, so much of our lives is decided at this level, the state level. The measures that we talk about, the ones that we talked about even today, the measures, the props, and then again, when they're voted on at the Assembly or the Senate level, folks, this is affecting your life on a daily basis in a way that the reality, the presidential election doesn't do. As much as we like to glorify it and magnify it, this happens here in this discussion we have right now. So how can people get a hold of you? How can people get involved with you?
Yeah.
Take the last few moments to talk about that.
Well, I'll just start by saying thank you, Rabbi, for having us here. Thanks for putting this together and having us in here, Sukkot. And as I mentioned at the beginning, Tikkun Olam has been fundamental to me from even before our temple was actually firebombed. From a very young age when I was in Hebrew school. The Jewish community is extremely important to me, and I'm really looking forward to fighting for the Jewish community in our state legislature. If you want to get involved, you can go to, let's see, kipforsenate.com. I can type it. I don't know if everyone can see online if I type it over here, but I'll just do that. kipforsenate.com. We have opportunities to phone bank, to text, to make postcards. We're working closely with Christie's campaign. So there's opportunities to do work on both those fronts if you happen to align. So you can go on our site, sign up at the Join Now, and if you can donate, obviously that's also very much appreciated as well. We've actually outraised Senator Wilk consistently throughout this year. We've raised a good amount of money, and in the first half, we had 7 times the amount of individual contributions that his campaign had. So we've really, we've got a good shot, and we feel confident about where we're at, but we really need to push it across the finish line. So any form of support is greatly appreciated. And I look forward to being, as you said, Rabbi, no matter how this goes, who knows, it's 2020, who knows what's going to happen, but either way, I was looking forward to coming physically to Temple and to meeting folks. Obviously can't do it, but I'm looking forward to that when the opportunity comes, just to break bread or challah and just hang out. So looking forward to that.
Well, it's been great to get to know you a little bit over these last months, and we hope to see more from you. I don't know, we're not gonna guilt you into coming to shul. We'll leave that to your mom to do. And so we'll who knows, maybe you'll have to split time back and forth between B'nai Israel and Beth Ami. So we'll look forward to seeing you one way or the other. And again, we want to thank you for being with us, and thank everybody for being there with us on Zoom. Some great questions, everybody.
Yep. And
we'll come back tomorrow night. We'll have our first of our 2 assembly candidates. We actually have Lucy Volotsky tomorrow. Somebody said, well, why do we have 2 Republicans? It's because that's 2 Republicans crossed the finish line. It wasn't like we were stacking it with Republicans. Kip is actually the only Democrat, only because the 2 assembly candidates were both Republicans for that district. So we're going to finish the last night with Senator Scott Wilk. But in the meantime, again, please reach out to his campaign and be a part of our political system, folks. Please, it's so important. Thank you for being here, Kip. It's been great to have you tonight in our sukkah, and we'll see you. Wish you the best of health and safety and security. And we say stay positive. Not that kind of positive, but
exactly
good kind of positive. All right.
Yep. To you as well. Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, everybody.
Night, everybody.
Great meeting you. We'll talk soon.